So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar by Dr. Anuraag, Business Resilience, the Art of Staying Ahead. This is a webinar organized in the School of Business for all students and the community. So, I will hand over the floor to Ms. Zainab, who will introduce the speaker and start the session with a moderation round. So, Zainab, over to you.
Thank you so much, Professor Tahseen. Assalamu alaikum and good morning to everyone. A very warm welcome to the American University of Ras Al Khaimah and its Masterclass series. My name is Zainab Vakas, and I am a business administration in marketing student here at AURAK, and it is my privilege to be moderating today's session on a subject that has never felt more relevant: business resilience and the art of staying ahead. Before we begin, just three quick notes to help you get the most out of this masterclass. We have dedicated a chat window and we will be taking your questions in a moderated Q&A session at the end. And the sharpest questions will be answered first, so do not hold back. Please do ask questions. Secondly, every participant today here will receive a certificate of participation from the AURAC. To qualify, you must remain for the full session. Our speaker today, Dr. Anuraag Guglaani, is an adjunct professor here at AURAK for Business Data Analytics, AI, and Marketing. And I'm actually a student in Marketing of Services. He is a group CEO and a board level operator who has spent 30 years building and transforming businesses across 26 industries and 35 countries, from the GCC across Africa into Southwest Asia and North America. And he is definitely highly awarded for his contributions to humanity. He sits on multiple family business boards across the MESA region, and he has personally managed business groups with turnovers up to $8 billion US. He is publicly known as the family business doctor, and today he is here to give us a diagnosis and, more importantly, a playbook. So, Dr. Anurag, before I hand over the floor to you, I just have two very quick questions, just 1 minute answer if you may, to set the stage. Firstly, let's talk about the topic at hand. Why do you think business resilience should matter to every single person who is attending this webinar today?
Thank you, Zainab, for the very, very kind introduction. And thank you, Professor Tehseen. Thank you to American University of Ras Al Khaimah, Professor Bassam, and all the faculty members for having me here. And I think there could not be a more relevant topic in current scenario, which on daily basis is changing in an amazing manner. So I think the answer to your question here, Zainab, would be that everyone here, the fact that we are all attending this webinar today is because resilience matters to each one of us in different domains. We have today a mix of students, faculty, business people, people working in the consulting space, right? And why it matters is because the world that we are operating in today is not the world that we were trained for, right? This is not what we studied, and this is not what we went through on a practical basis, right? So whether you are a student in your final year, whether you are a family business running a second generation, or maybe you are an executive steering a billion-dollar enterprise, or an entrepreneur in the making, or you already are, for all of us, the ground beneath is moving at the same time today. So resilience is not about surviving that moment, right? It's about staying upright. We got to stay clear-headed, and we got to stay ahead when everyone around us is reacting to headlines and the media, the media, which the social media, the digital media, which drives everything today, and which is what we witness happening today, and which is why I believe what we are discussing matters today, not tomorrow.
Most definitely, I agree with you. Resilience is really important, especially in the era that we are existing today. I have a follow-up question to that. You've led around 26 industries. What do you think is one myth about resilience that you would like to kill in today's session, or at least you aim to?
I think that's very simple, because the biggest problem or the myth with resilience is that for to everybody it means caution. To a human mind, resilience at certain stage means caution, and which means for businesses it's about cutting cost, hunkering down, or waiting for the storm to pass. Just wait and watch. Now that is not resilience, right? And that is called retreat, dressed up in a business language or in a suit like I am wearing, right? So real resilience is offensive in nature. It is not defensive. So it is the business that would see a crisis coming, which absorbs the shock, that pivots faster than the market, and that walks out to the other side with more market share, better talent, or probably even a stronger balance sheet than what it went in with. That is what resilience is about. So resilience is not the opposite of ambition. It is what makes ambition possible in a volatile world. So that is principally the myth that I would like to probably clarify today.
Wow, that is such an amazing insight. I really cannot wait for you to start with your presentation because I would really like you to shine more light on this. With that being said, Dr. Anurag, the floor is yours. Please take us through it.
Thank you to all the participants who are here, and we have many, and thank you to all. So I want to be very clear with you about what this masterclass will give you and what it will not. I want to be very clear with you about what this masterclass gives you. So I am not going to give you a corporate framework which is pulled from a textbook, right? And even though this masterclass is organized by a university, I am not going to quote business school cases to you because I come from having lived 30 years of experience. So what is coming to you today is from a man who has built, lost, turned around, and grown businesses in 26 industries and 35 countries by living it and not by observing it. So we just let's start by the question which Zainab asked. She said about killing a myth about resilience. So we will start by killing a myth about resilience, and probably let me see if I can move. Yes. So we will start by killing this myth about resilience. I will show you the pattern across the 4 crisis tenures that I have personally watched unfold in this region. And I will then also give you a framework for very simple moves, which I call the 4A resilience model. And then we will end up with one action per persona. Why I'm saying per persona? Because we have different types of people attending this particular masterclass. So that's something which you can take with you. And I believe that if I do my job well today, then you will leave from here with the playbook which you can operate instantly. And we will later also send you a diagnostic tool which helps you determine your own resilience, whether on a personal or a professional or a business level, right? So with that, let's start with something very important, right? I know, like I said, I can see from the chat box and from the attendee list who all are here today, and there are 3 different types of people here. So let me say this to the students, the future leaders. Okay, so to the 3 audiences, one, you will inherit a world which is more volatile, the students, and a world which you are entering into is going to be more unpredictable and more interconnected than any which we have built before, right? That's how the world is changing. And you're not too young for this session. Why? I would say you are exactly the right age, because what I'm sharing with you today is not something that you have to memorize for an exam, right? That I would do that in my faculty, but today it is the mental architecture that I'm giving you, which will help you decide, probably I would say even 20 years from now, whether you are a leader who builds or you are a follower who's reacting, right? So that is for students. And for the SME business owners or the family business leaders who are here, you are the people I spend most of my time with, right? So you are in my blood. So you are the ones lying, but you are also the ones who, your capital is on line, right? You are the ones who are lying awake at night. Your family's name is on the line, and your team is watching you for your signals. So I want you to know, this particular category of business owners, that I'm not speaking to you as an advisor here. I'm speaking to you as one of you. My name is on the same kind of boardroom doors as you have, right? So whatever I give you today, I share with you today very personally. And lastly, to the executives, the corporate, government, institutional leaders, and everyone else, you are leading through turbulence, right? Your decisions are going to ripple through thousands of people's lives, anything that you decide. And so the four pillars which I intend to share with you today will translate directly into a board level strategy, probably also a risk posture and help for capital allocation. So every principle that I'm sharing with you today applies to all three of you as target segments who should be hearing this, because you will scale changes and all the principles which I'm telling you will help you scale those changes, but the logic does not change for the three different categories of people here, right? So let me start by, like I mentioned, killing something. So when most leaders, they hear the word resilience, I answered that in the first question. What I was talking is that they think about survival. They think about cutting costs, they think about waiting, they think about hiding or enduring. So they think about it as a defensive posture, something you do when things go bad, right? And that is absolutely wrong. That is not resilience. As I mentioned to you, that is fear in a suit. Okay. So I have watched businesses that survived COVID by cutting everything, firing their best people, slashing their marketing cost, and going absolutely quiet. Okay, I watched such businesses during COVID. 5 years later now, they are still there, but they are much smaller, they are much weaker, their best people have gone to competitors, and their market share has been permanently handed over to someone else. So what happened? They survived, yes, but they did not win. And we are not talking about survival, we are talking about winning the game. Okay. So resilience, and why we picked up this topic for today, because it is something very different. It is the capacity that is built before the crisis and which enables you to stay ahead through the volatility. So it's an operating philosophy. It's not a fire drill, right? That the crisis has happened, let's go and do this drill. No, it's an operating philosophy. So a resilient business will primarily convert disruption into a competitive advantage. That is guaranteed, right? So it does not just tolerate the storm, it uses the storm to separate itself from the competition itself. Okay, and that is the most important thing. The most important thing to remember is that resilience is not the opposite of ambition. It is the foundation beneath that ambition, and you cannot pursue ambitious goals in a volatile world like what we are living in today without a resilient base. I mean, you can try, definitely we can try, but the first shock that you get, it is going to take you out. That is for sure, and I'm telling you from having gone through these experiences. Okay, so and when I say I'm going through experiences, let me take you on this like a 30-year walk through this region. Okay. So during the first Gulf War, investors' confidence shook. A lot of contracts got frozen, and businesses panicked. And a smaller number of businesses, quietly, without much fanfare around them, they positioned themselves for the recovery. Then came 9/11. I have seen money fly out from the region like crazy. I watched the region being painted with a broad brush that it did not deserve. It's happening even today. Tourism collapsed, banks tightened, and once again the same pattern. Most retreated, but a few doubled down. Then came 2008, the financial crisis that froze credit lines across the region. Real estate collapsed overnight. National budgets were again being rewritten in real time, and I witnessed very large, very established businesses collapse. And I also at the same time watched much smaller businesses. What were they doing? Acquiring assets, hiring talent, and emerging 2 years later, as the regional champions. And then came COVID, a pandemic that shut the world down in matter of weeks. We all know it. So 4 major crises, plus there were also 2 smaller ones. I barely remember them anymore because the businesses I was involved with had built the capacity to absorb them quietly without much drama, right? So they were just walkover. So important aspect is that across every single one of these events, the pattern was the same. Every single time, the people who panicked, they lost. And every single time, the people who prepared, they won. So this is not a coincidence. It didn't happen by chance. It is the law. It is the nature's law. And that law is the foundation of everything that I am sharing with you today, right? Everything that I'm sharing with you today comes from Every crisis is nature's way of clearing the field, so it sorts businesses into, very ruthlessly but efficiently. It sorts them into these three categories. The first category is the weak business. Okay, what it's a kind of business which probably would have collapsed under pressure with no reserves, no plan, no adaptability. And when the shock hit, they had nothing to absorb the blow. And I'm talking about from these four instances of crisis situations, what happened. So real-time situations, right? So these businesses had nothing to absorb the blow. They were completely eliminated permanently. And I have personally seen these businesses in this category vanish and they are never coming back, right? So that is the first category which the nature's law puts you in, weak businesses. And then you have the second category, which is your mediocre businesses. Now this is the largest group. And honestly, I see it as the saddest group. And don't take me wrong when I say that. Why? Because these are the ones that retreat to safety. They cut everything. They waited. They hoped for recovery. That let's just wait and watch, that's the standard statement. But when recovery eventually came, they were still there, but they had lost the market share completely. They lost their talent, they lost the confidence. They barely survived. But survival is not the same as winning, right? That's not what business is about. Business is about thriving. Businesses are responsible for livelihoods of many. So businesses hold a lot of responsibility and they should be winning. And which is why this third category, which is unfortunately a small group, but a disciplined group. This category, they expanded their market share in the middle of the crisis. They hired the talent that competitors were letting go. And they invested in the gaps that opened up. And how did they emerge? They didn't survive. They dominated. So these are the businesses I work with. And these are the businesses I learn from. And these are the businesses which today we are going to understand together. Right? So, but before we do that, I think each one of us should ask ourselves honestly, because nobody else is going to ask us that which of these three are we today? Now, you may look at it as a business or you may look at it as an individual, but the question to ask is, which of these three are we today? You just have to answer in your own head, because the rest of this session is going to give you the tools to move into the third category, and that is our ultimate aim, the third category. That small group, the small disciplined group, how can we move people from the second large group to the smaller group? But that can happen only if you are willing to be honest about where you stand right now. Okay, so that self-introspection, I think, is important from that perspective. Okay, so let me start with let me tell you from a very personal story. Because I don't believe in standing on a stage and telling you to do something which I've already not done myself. So in March 2020, when the world shut down, we made a decision in our own businesses, which at that time was I would say genuinely contrarian.
Okay, so
and I talk about this every time to everywhere, because what I saw was that every boardroom I sat in, and I sit in quite a few, everyone was in survival mode. The word of the month was cut. Cut headcount, cut costs, cut investment, cut marketing. Everything was just cut. But I looked at the same data, the same uncertainty, the same fear. But for me, I was seeing something else. What I saw was an internal opportunity which was disguised as an external threat, right? Threat was pretty visible, but what was not visible was that internal opportunity. So what did we do? Couple of things. One, we did not let one single person go because of the market, not even one. What we did do, honestly, like I said, we did not let even one single person go off the market. But what we honestly did was that we used the crisis to have that difficult conversations that good times did not allow us to have, right? Because in good times, we are all complacent. Things are moving well, so we don't bother so much. But what we did was we did part ways with the unproductive people. And what I mean by unproductive people is the ones that we had been tolerating because revenue was covering for them. So we had to part. We did that with dignity, but we did it why? In the interest of the ones who were productive and the ones who really deserved to be taken care of in that scenario. So not because of the market, but because of the nature's law of the natural filtering process, where somebody else was covering their cost earlier, right? So two, we actively recruited. So while our competitors were cutting, we made the list of people who had never been, which we never were able to attract in good times, right? Because there are good people who have got good job, they're performing well, they're not thinking of leaving, we want them, we can't get them when things are good. But we called them. Because in a crisis, what happens is that talented people who are in unstable businesses, right? They may be talented, but their business may not be stable enough. So they start looking for a home because they want stability, they want leadership, and they want clarity. So if you have those three things to offer, then you have a beautiful recruiting window that does not exist in a bull market, right? That does not exist in a good times. So that was an advantageous situation. And third, we did is we communicated every week to our team, to our clients, to our partners, to everybody. We told them what we were seeing, what we were doing, and what the plan was, right? Communication was extremely important. We did not go silent, because silence in a crisis is never neutral. It is always interpreted as weakness. That's how the external forces see it, as weakness. And what was our result? As mentioned here, we grew 25% during the pandemic. Productivity surged. Innovation was at its peak. Retention of people, that was held. And while the world was shutting down, our businesses were expanding. So the principle I want you to take away from this story is that people perform at their best when the stakes are real and the leadership is clear. This is extremely important. Business is about people. If we don't understand people, we don't understand business, right? So and people also perform at their best when the leadership is clear. So crisis does not break good people, never. But poor leadership will do that. So if you are clear, if you are present, if you are honest about what you see, your team will run through the walls for you. We did this when we announced that not only we will let anybody go, we will not do any deduction, but we requested every team member should put in 25% more productivity, because we have an aim and ambition to achieve, and they did that. So this is what happens in great leadership. That team really starts respecting you and does things which are miraculous in nature, right? So now, having understood all of this, let's now come to what does it take practically to be that third type of business, right? We said we want to move as many businesses and people to the resilient one, right? So what does it take? So that one, the resilient one, which wins when everyone else is surviving. Okay, we are differentiating between survival and winning. So my observation, again, coming from 35 countries, 26 industries, is that every resilient business makes the same 4 moves. 4, not 1, not 2, 4 moves. And I have termed it, I call it the 4A resilience model. And it is so simple enough that you can remember it in this room today, and you can still use it 5 years from now if you are sitting in a boardroom, right? So there are principally 4 pillars here. The first pillar is anticipate. It means that we read the signals before they become the headlines, right? We have the capability to anticipate. The second is the capability to absorb. We build the buffers that let us take the shock without breaking, right? So that's the absorption part of it. The third would be adaptation, right? We will redeploy faster than the market. And through how do we redeploy? Through relationships, through talent, and through communication, the 3 aspects which I already mentioned earlier. And the fourth pillar is advance. This is where you get offensive. The offensive moves that convert turbulence into a lasting separation. This is our fourth pillar. And the critical thing to understand about these four is the first three are only protecting value. Very important, they are protecting value. But is the fourth one, the fourth pillar, which is creating value. Okay, so most businesses that talk about resilience, they actually stop after pillar 3 because they have protected the value. They protect, they absorb, and they adapt, and then they wait for the bad times or the storm to pass. But can we request for mic to be muted? Yeah. So and they wait for the storm to pass. So, but the businesses that win and the ones that I have watched dominate across these 4 decades, they do not stop. They advance, and that is where the art of staying ahead lives. Right? We were talking today, our whole topic is about business resilience and the art of staying ahead, right? So the art of staying ahead lives in our fourth pillar, which is advance. And so we will go through the 4 pillars. So just stay with me patiently. Let's start with anticipate, which is our first pillar, right? A question I have asked every CEO I sit with. A very simple, plain question. I ask them, what are you watching? Right? What are you watching? And most CEOs tell me the same things. They are watching revenue, they are watching margin, and they watch the customer churn. And internally and externally, they are watching the headlines and they are watching the geopolitical events, right? And they are reading the reports coming from the analysts and the economists. Every CEO, right? Because this is how you manage your business, right? You look externally, you look at key indicators and outside. But the issue is, with all these indicators, these are all lagging indicators. Every one of them, which I just now spoke about, they are lagging indicators. Because why? Because by the time the revenue is declining, the customer has already left. By the time margin is compressing, our cost base is already in trouble. And by the time the headline hits, the damage is done. So lagging indicators, they tell us what already happened. But the resilient leaders are taught to watch something completely different. What do they watch? They don't watch the lagging indicators, they watch the leading indicators. And these are the signals that tell you what is about to happen. The signals of what is about to happen. Quite interestingly, and I think some of my students would be here from my business data analytics class, where I talk to them about the 3 data analytics, which is predictive, prescriptive, adaptive, right? All these various data analysts, which is the aspect is that these are also indicators which leaders look at or watch, right? So I'll give you 5 which I have personally watched out of the leading indicators. The first one is the supplier stress signals, right? It's very important to see that because for businesses, every business works with some kind of a supplier, right? So when your supplier starts delaying their payments to their own suppliers and they start asking for extended terms or they start reducing their inventory, that is a signal for you. Right? This is a leading indicator. That's a signal for you. It is telling you that the capital chain behind your business is tightening, because that's where that's your source of supply. So the capital chain behind your business is tightening, and much before it becomes your problem, it is already becoming their problem, and that's the leading indicator you watch. The second thing that you watch is easy. It is the talent market movement, right? That's where you put your HR teams on. Who is looking for a job right now who was not looking at it 6 months ago? That is the talent market movement you watch, because talent at unstable businesses will always move first. That's going to move first, and that will tell you which business is getting unstable. And by the time there is a public layoff, best recruits have already updated their profiles, right? So I already mentioned this being a major opportunity of hiring also. So that's an indicator to watch. The third indicator to watch is your customers' consumption pattern, because that also changes, right? And not the revenue. It's not the revenue that you watch, it is the consumption pattern of your customer, of how is it consuming your service is what you watch. What are they actually using and what are they cutting back on? They will tell you everything which no analyst, no economist will tell you. So a customer who's reducing consumption is telling you something much before they reduce their spend. Okay. And the fourth thing to watch, I would say, is the cost of capital and the credit spread trends, the trends around credit spread. Because when credit spreads widen, even by a few basis points, it means that the people who lend money, right? That's what it means, right? That the people who lend money are getting nervous with the situation. And when they get nervous, they tighten. So this happens much before the public narrative actually catches up. So this is also a leading indicator. And the fifth is, which you watch, is your cross-border capital flow. Where is the money moving? And from where is it leaving? This is the earliest, clearest signal of a shift in confidence. And this is public data you can find very easily, and you talk to a few bankers here and there's few people, you'll find that. And this is also available to anyone who knows where to look. So cross-border capital flow. So, and why am I telling you that? Because the difference between a leader and a follower is not the intelligence. It is not the access that you have. And it is not even the experience. Okay. It is the indicator they choose to watch. It is the indicator they choose to watch. So even once again, in my business data analytics, one of the thing which I'm teaching my students and telling them which are those indicators that you should be watching. And I tell them that why this skill matters in the real world. It's important for them to understand. You may not look at it from a course perspective, but in real world, these things make an impact. So I think now the next question for us should be that if we are watching the right signals, then where are we exposed, right? Then where are we exposed? So every business has dependencies, suppliers, customers, geographies, systems, and in many businesses we also have something which we call the single point of expertise. It is that one person on your team who knows how the critical things work, right? So that's a single point of expertise. So the question is not whether we have dependencies, we all have, right? The question is, have we mapped those dependencies? Most businesses, and I really mean most, including very, very large ones, they've never done this exercise properly. They think that they know their dependencies, but they do not. Not until they have written them down on a single page, right? So three moves, as I am stating here. One is you identify. You map every single dependency that runs through a zone of active risk. And you do that today, now, not tomorrow. You put it on a whiteboard and you get your leadership team around it and you be honest about it, right, on the dependency. Second is you reroute. You diversify your supply lines where you can, and then you reduce single points of failure, right? You reduce. So what you do is that you sign standby contracts much in advance before you need them. Because what will happen is when you need them, the terms are never going to be in your favor, right? So assuming that things will remain, because this is a cycle, right? We've seen this coming again and again. So you got to be prepared for it and in advance when things are in your favor. The third is buffer. So when we cannot reroute, we build that inventory. We build inventory, we build cash, we build redundancy, and we buy ourselves time. Today also, and this happened during COVID also, the biggest gainers were the ones who held inventory at the time when they needed it. And now with supply chain disruption, they stand at a major advantage. So we buy ourselves time, because time in a crisis is the most valuable asset we can own. So I have watched this, that the businesses that stress tested their dependencies before COVID, they survived, and the ones who did not, they were literally scrambling. And the same thing is holding true now. So the question is not if, right? The question is when. And the important aspect is that whether we have done this work before our phone starts ringing from everywhere, right? So so that's our first pillar. Our second pillar is absorb, and the heart of absorb is cash. Unfortunately, a lot of companies are very poor at cash flow management. So the heart of absorb is cash, and majority of the people think about cash as a security, right? It's a comfort, it's a pillow, something you can keep so you can sleep well at night. And I think I would like you to shift your mental model completely today, because cash is not security. Cash is optionality. Because why? Because security is passive. You sit on it, you hoard it, you hope that you never need that security, right? But optionality is active in nature. So it's the power to act when nobody else can, right? So it's your buyer's seat at the table when others don't have anything, right? So if you look back at 2008 or even 2020, in both of these moments, the greatest wealth transfers in this region, they did not happen in good years. They happened in the bad years, because in the bad years, distressed assets come to the market. Good businesses built over decades, they get sold because the owners cannot make payroll for more than 3 months. And who buys them? The liquid buyers, the ones who had protected their cash, the ones who had optionality, the ones who had prepared. So there are three moves you can make on cash. One is to right size your reserve, which means minimum 6 months of fixed costs in accessible reserves, and not based on best case scenario, based on stress case scenario, where you may fairly assume that a 30% drop in revenue is going to happen and you run the numbers accordingly, right? So minimum 6 months of fixed cost. You create optionality, which means that you get your credit lines drawn and committed before you need them, right? You don't have to wait when things happen and you draw your credit line. Then you use them but you draw them in advance. You map your liquid assets, and you know exactly what you can convert to cash and in how many days if you had to, right? And third is you be ready to deploy. So you do not wait until a distressed asset shows up and then you start thinking, right? So you got to know what to deploy. Third one is that we be ready to deploy, right? So we don't wait for a distressed asset to show up and start thinking, because we are thinking forward. Because when the moment comes, it comes very fast, and you will not have days. You will have days, not months, to decide, what you want to do. And lastly, you protect your cash, but you do not hoard it. Because when others are panicking, you are going to be that person at the table who has the checkbook in hand. And that position does not come to the lucky, it will come to the people who are prepared, right? So, and with that, the second thing that absorb requires, and a very few businesses do this very well, because they don't have that courage to look inward. So in every organization I have worked with, there are three things everybody knows, but nobody does anything about. One is the inefficiency. Like I mentioned, the one you tolerate because revenue is covering for it. It is that department that is not quite performing, but it's okay. Or the processes that are wasting 4 hours a week, or the vendor you should have renegotiated. All this is inward, but during good times, all are overlooked. The manual processes, the things that we should have automated 2 years ago, the system which is breaking, or the workflow that depends just on one person physically being in the office, otherwise the system breaks. That's second. Third is the reform. The cultural change, the structural change, the conversation about succession. That difficult conversation which we postpone for year or maybe years, right? And so peacetime will never force us to fix those things. Growth will cover for them, but a crisis completely removes your excuses. And at that stage, you can't just stay silent. So crisis is creating that mandate for operational reform that peacetime, never delivers. So when the environment is getting hard, people stop defending inefficiency and they start looking for performance. So that political cover that is protecting that status quo, that is evaporating. So what we do, we use it, right? So the inefficiency, we cut it now. The manual processes, we automate them now. And the reform, we do it now, not after the recovery. Why now? Because if we wait, we will waste the opportunity that the crisis has given us. The best operational transformations I have ever executed in businesses have happened in the middle of turbulence, and not despite it, but because of it. And I think that's a very important point for us to take from here. Now, the third pillar is adapt. Okay, and adapt begins with a key element that most businesses underestimate. Why? Because in a crisis, what happens? Trust becomes our currency. So the relationships that we have with our bank, with suppliers, with key clients, all those relationships in good times are very nice to have, right? We all have them. But in bad times, they become the difference between survival and collapse. They are as important as that. And this is what I have painfully observed across every crisis I have gone through, is that the 90 days following the first shock, right? The 90 days following the first shock, they will define the next 9 years of the competitive position of that company. And which is why we say, and sometimes you struggle to remember a company which used to exist and does not exist. Companies with large market shares. I always give examples of companies like Nokia, BlackBerry, and there are many, Kodak and many more, right? Who, in spite of having largest market shares, collapsed. So lots of learnings. So the relationships we deepen in those 90 days, they become our strength, and the relationships we neglect, they become our vulnerability. Those make us vulnerable, right? So I would, anyone who's here for learning and action, I would say this week you make 3 calls. One, you call your banker, and you don't call in panic, right? You're calling proactively. So you signal to them your stability, but you share your stress case numbers, right? The numbers you worked with them before they ask you, and you secure your credit facility before you need it. Because once you need it, the conversation is going to be completely different. Your confidence level, their understanding level is going to be different, because at that time you would have moved from the status of being a partner to a risk, right? So, and that's not what you want. Second thing you do is that you go and call your key supplier. You understand their pressure. You understand what their cash position looks like. You have a frank, honest understanding with them. You commit to the volume where you can. Because again, in a crisis, suppliers will have priority queues. And the businesses that already communicated with them early, that made commitments, and those who were loyal, they will get that chance to be at the top of the queue. Everyone else will have to wait. And thirdly, you call your anchor client. Every business has anchor client. As we know this rule in business, the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of our customers give us 80% of business. So the client that keeps that lights on, these are your anchor clients. So you reaffirm your partnership with them. You ask, how can you make their life easier, not harder? And you become indispensable to them in the hardest moment. And believe me, you will own that relationship for a decade. I have a case in Abu Dhabi of someone who, under a fraud, one business lost about $10 million in one go, and nobody in the market was willing to supply them products. And we decided that we will support that person because we believed in that person and his system. And he rebounded in 3 months and shifted all his entire business to us. I'm just giving you a live example here in Abu Dhabi, but this is what happened. So the key move on all the 3 calls is that you do not call to ask for something, you call to offer something. Anyone will call when they are desperate, right? But the mark of a leader and a long-term partner is the call you make when you are not desperate. That call, that signals, which is giving the confidence. I'm here, I'm stable, I'm a long-term operator. How can I help? That call in a crisis is worth more than any contract you will ever sign. Okay, and then we look at the part I talked about in Adapt, which is something I touched on already, but I'm coming back to it because this is where most businesses underinvest, and this is where the biggest long-term gains are made. The first one is talent. I mentioned when external uncertainty rises, talented people are looking for, they're leaving unstable business, looking for home. They want stability, leadership, vision. They don't want comfort. They want to know that they are building something that will last. And if you can offer those 3 things, stability, leadership, vision, You have a recruiting window that simply does not exist in a bull market. So you make that list, the list of people you would never attract before, right? You write the names down, you call them now, not after the recovery. And by the time the market stabilizes, this window is closed and you'll be paying a premium to hire them. So you do it now. The second is communication. So in crisis, I mentioned silence is not neutral, it is always interpreted. And it is interpreted as weakness, confusion, fear. So you have to lead the narrative. Otherwise, the narrative will lead you. Because if you don't communicate, your team will tell themselves a story, your client will tell themselves a story, your partners will tell themselves a story. And if you're not filling that space, the story that they are telling themselves will almost always be worse than reality. So communicate clearly and constantly. You tell your team what you see. You tell your clients what you're doing. And you tell your partners what that plan is. You don't need to have all the answers. It's not important. But you need to be present, you need to be honest, you need to be moving, right? So one line which you should remember even after this session is over is that confidence is contagious. Confidence is contagious and so is panic. And you got to choose which one are you going to spread, confidence or panic, right? Okay, so with that, we've covered 3 pillars. Anticipate, which reads the signals, absorb, which builds the buffers, and adapt, which pivots faster than the market, right? So all these 3 pillars protect value, as I mentioned to you before. They are defensive, they are necessary, but they are non-negotiable. And if you do not build these 3, the first shock will take you out. But this is where most resilience frameworks stop. We need to understand that protecting value is not the same as creating value, which is why we talk now about the 4th pillar, which is advanced, which is different. Because this is where the art of staying ahead lives, as I mentioned, right? This is what separates a resilient business from a dominant one. So while a weak business collapses and the mediocre businesses retreat, as we mentioned, resilient businesses make 3 offensive moves at the same time. 3. 1, they acquire. Offensive move, acquire. You go after a distressed asset, you go after talent that is available, and you go after market share that is being abandoned. Second, you accelerate. It means that your decision-making speed has to be amazing. While competitors may internally debate for months, you decide in days, right? And then third is, we architect, redesign the business itself so that when the next crisis hits, we don't just survive, we absorb and we turn it into fuel, rocket fuel. So let me just quickly run through and explain to you these 3. Distress acquisition, I mentioned that greatest wealth transfer happens during volatile periods, right? So and the buyers are the ones who are liquid and who have cash to do that, right? And these are the buyers who acquired such businesses during 2008, 2020, and they are now running those businesses with exceptional results. So the question you have to ask is, when the next moment comes, will you be the seller or will you be the buyer? Okay. Second move is market share capture. So when your competitors are cutting the marketing, when they are retreating from clients and when they are going silent, what do? You go opposite. You double down on the visibility, you double down on the service, you double down on being present. So market share that shifts in a downturn will never shift back. And the customers who experience you being there for them in difficult moment, they will stay with you for decades. So and the customers who experience you going silent and difficult, they will leave, right? So brand building happens fastest in silence. Why? Because when everything else is quiet, your voice is carrying a very disproportionate weight, right? Because everything else is silent. No, you are not a part of the noise. So that's important. And the third move is the speed of decision making. It is the single most underestimated strength in crisis, the ability to decide fast. And why I say that is because large organizations, they spend time on debating, they create committees for everything. They will ask for more data to investigate. In normal environment, all that is fine, it is prudent. But during crisis, this is fatal. Resilient firms and the ones which I admire most, they decide in days what mediocre firms will debate for months. And even the country which we live in, why that country is admired for it coming out in an unbelievable manner is because the speed of decision making, right? So speed of decision is not recklessness, it is the ability to act on an incomplete picture because we've done the underlying work beforehand. And then our fourth pillar is brand building in silence. So when competitors are going out, our voice is standing out, right? So thought leadership compounds faster in downturn, right? People spend time, they listen to you. And this is the moment when you should be writing, you should be publishing, you should be speaking, you should be appearing, not retreating. Just like I am giving this masterclass and you are here hearing it, that you are brand building in silence. So when the economies of attention is when supply is low, value is high, right? So because your content is competing with less contents, your voice is competing with fewer voices, so your presence is traveling further, right? The best brand work I have ever done, those relationships, the reputation, the positioning, all of that has compounded fastest in the moments when I saw my competitors going quiet. Okay, and then the final move under advance is the most strategic one. It's not about what you do, it's about what you do in the next crisis. It's about how you design the business so that the crisis becomes your source of strength and not a risk, right? So I mentioned most businesses fall in other three, and you've honestly thought in your mind, right, where you stand. So the first part here is fragile, right? Fragile businesses, they break under pressure. They are optimized for just one scenario: single geography, single revenue stream, high fixed cost base, centralized decision making. So when the environment changes, they cannot change with it. They snap. The second is robust. So what do robust businesses do? They survive the stress test. They have diversified. I've always said this to businesses. Globalization, cross-border expansion is diversification of geographies. Okay. Then multiple revenue streams. They create multiple revenue streams. They have variable cost flexibility. Everything is not fixed cost. They have distributed authority. So when the environment changes, they hold. They do not break, but they also do not benefit. But the third is very important, which is anti-fragility. The anti-fragile businesses, they actually strengthen under this pressure because they are engineered for volatility. So when one business line slows, another one accelerates. When one country goes down, the other one is still performing. So they have built revenue streams that rise in chaos. So they have an optionality rich structure and fast autonomous teams that can move without waiting for central approval. Okay, so when you hit an anti-fragile business with pressure, it will not just hold the pressure, it will get stronger. Okay, so the question I would leave you on this slide is, which of these three categories are you planning to design your business to be, right? Because most leaders think that they are robust. In reality, they are fragile. The fact is that they have just not been tested yet. The crisis will reveal which one you actually are, and don't let it be that late that you redesign, right? So we are almost close to conclusion. I'll bring all the four pillars together on this page, the 4 A's as I call them. So under anticipate, you principally ask yourself, what signals am I not yet watching? What signals I am not watching? In absorb, you will ask yourself, where is my buffer? Where is my buffer thinnest, right? And in adapt, you will ask, why must I call and who must I call this week, right? Who do I want to call and maintain my relationship? And in advance, what you will do? You will go in after the question, where will I create separation? So 4 questions, and that is the whole model. You can write them on a card, you can keep them in your wallet. Whatever you do, you can put that at the top of every leadership meeting agenda. And you can ask them in every quarterly review, because if your team is not answering all 4 of these questions honestly and regularly, then you are not running a resilient business. You are running a business that has not yet been tested. Okay. So with that, I have given you a framework. But a framework means nothing unless it leads to action. Then otherwise it becomes more of an academic framework. So I'm going to close this section with one action, as I mentioned, per persona type who are attending today's event. Now, first is for the students who are the future leaders. Your action is that you audit your own resilience. You map your 3 most valuable skills, right? You identify the one that has single point of dependency. Maybe you are relying on one industry, one geography, one platform. you commit to diversifying it within the next 90 days, because you are also a business, but you are a business of one. Today you are a business of one. So the same rule applies to you. And for the operators, the SME and family business leaders, I would say, you run a 4A diagnostic on your business. You score yourself on each of the 4 pillars out of 10, right? And be honest. You name the lowest one, and that will become your priority this quarter. And you will assign an accountable owner for that. And then you commit to a 30-day first milestone, right? You know, do not try to fix all 4 at one time. That's not going to happen. So you fix the weakest one first, and that's where your highest return on effort lies. This is not return on investment, it is return on effort. Okay. And then for the executives, the corporate, government, institutional leaders, everybody else, your action is that you make resilience a board level KPI. You add a 4A review to your next meeting, and you name the resilience matrix alongside the revenue and the EBITDA. Okay. And you commission a leading indicator dashboard within the 60 days, because what will get measured at the board level, what you will measure at board level is what is going to get built in the organization, not the other way around. So all 3 which I have mentioned to you all 3 are executable actions. Okay. So my last final slide here, and I'm going to close with this, that every morning when we will wake up to news, the news is designed to scare us. That's how they get their TRPs. Geopolitical tensions, market volatility, supply chain disruption, regulatory change, every one of that is a piece of noise that wants to pull you into a short-term reaction. Your job as a leader, as an operator, as a future executive, and as someone who has attended this masterclass today is not to let that noise make you forget the signal. And I'm telling you again, I've watched this signal for over 3 decades now, and it is very clear to me, the gulf does not break, it bends. And every single time it bends, it comes back stronger with more infrastructure, more institutional depth, more diversified economy, and beautifully, the more sophisticated leadership that it had even before the pressure came, right? So the Gulf is going to move forward. It moves forward. It always has. Your job is to make sure that your business moves with it, right? So do not build a business that depends that the storm is never going to come. Build a business that is stronger than because the storm has come already, right? And you anticipate the signals, you absorb the shocks, you adapt faster than your market, and you advance when others are retreating. Because this is resilience, and this is the art of staying ahead. Okay, with that, I am going to now, do I have one last slide here? Okay, yes. And with that, we will move to questions. I give it back to you, Zainab.
Thank you, Dr. Anuraag. Might I say that was truly a masterclass. So much insight, so much information, and I'm pretty sure that everyone over here has a clear insight of resilience in the business space. I do have a question for you. I believe you've already covered it in your presentation. For any student in the room like me who hears the word resilience and they think that it is a topic for CEOs only, how do you think a 20-year-old like me can use the 4A model to integrate it into the career that is just starting?
Zainab, thank you so much, and thank you for asking that question. It is wonderful, and I am so glad that as a student somebody is asking that, because that means you're already thinking like a leader, right? So I'm going to answer this very directly. This 4A model which I've shown to you, it is not a CEO framework. It is a life framework that actually happens to apply to businesses, right? So if someone is able to build it in your career at 22, by the time you are 32, you will be 10 years ahead of your peers, and I mean that literally, because others are not reading this, others are not grasping it. I mean, just to explain the relevance to a 22-year-old, the 4 pillars. First pillar, we were talking about anticipate. So at 22, what does this mean? For a 22-year-old, it means that what signals you are watching about your own industry, about your own skills, about your own relevance. You do not just read the news, right? You watch what is happening to the jobs 2 steps above you. For example, you watch where AI is changing your field. You watch which skills are appreciating in value, which are depreciating. Because by the time that change reaches you, it will become too late to pivot, right? So that is your, for a 22-year-old, in anticipation. And when we look at absorption, so even for a 22-year-old, you should have 3 months of living costs saved. This is your financial cushion, right? But more importantly, it is your mental buffer. You do not let your identity be tied to one employer, one city, one role. You have to build optionality early in life while it is cheap. And your and then the other two pillars also I'll quickly take through for a 22-year-old. So you got adapt, right? So for students, your relationship is your currency. You start now, you call your professor, you stay in touch with your alumni, you add value to people before you need anything from them. That network which you will build now at 22, between 22 and 28, which will define your career between 32 and 50. That's a point you should take. And lastly, from an advanced perspective, I'll tell you, this is where most young people miss. You have to be offensive with your career, not defensive. Everyone else is looking for safety. You look for the hard problems others are not solving. And that is where your separation will happen. So, in principle, you audit yourself quarterly against these four. That single habit will change you for your life. You don't have to wait until you are going to run a company or anything else, right? So I think that's my message for a 32-year-old.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Professor. Actually, I have a follow-up question. You just said right now that the cash is not optionality. So I believe that it would be, sorry, you said that cash is optionality, and it's not security. So for someone who is a family business leader listening here, how much cash do you think is too much cash? And do you think there is a point where hoarding it would become a strategic liability?
I already mentioned a lot of businesses have this issue with cash flow management, even having the best of the finance people with them. But I also said the rule is 6 months of stressed case fixed cost, right? Not best case stress phase, which is on a 30% drop. So because if you are not going to keep that, whatever number comes out after doing these assumptions, then you are not operating a business. You are more like running a lottery ticket, right? So the ceiling, I would say, when cash exceeds roughly 18 months of this stressed fixed cost, right? So the ceiling is between 6 to 18 months, right? So when it goes beyond 18 months, things start to go wrong. The return on equity collapses. The next generation will start asking uncomfortable questions when they see that cash. And most importantly, businesses lose the muscle memory of deployment, because when a real opportunity comes, they hesitate and they have now forgotten how to move ahead, right? So it destroys the value. So I would say 6 months is the floor, 18 months is the ceiling. Anything above that needs to be deployed into growth, into acquisition, into opportunity, or just return back to shareholders. But don't keep it. Your cash is a tool, and the moment it stops being a tool and becomes a comfort, it becomes liability. And I think the best operators, they know the difference between these three tools. Yeah.
All right, I would, since we're on a time constraint, I will only ask you to entertain one question from the people who have asked questions in the chat. A student asked that how can they know if their anticipating is weak or strong, or it should be anticipated more because they struggle with the first step of the four A's, which is anticipation.
Okay, so what we are going to do is that all those people who registered, who attended, and those who not, I am going to send you a diagnostic tool to work upon, right? Which is beautiful, which is simple, which is easy. And when you have that diagnostic tool, your question will be answered and it will help you in this particular process.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
With that being said, Dr. Anuraag, thank you so much for an incredibly insightful and thought-provoking session. I would say you've not only unpacked the concept of resilience, but you've reframed it as a mindset and a strategic advantage. On the behalf of the American University of Ras Al Khaimah and the School of Business, it has been an absolute honor to host you today. And we truly appreciate the depth of experience and clarity that you've shared with us this morning. To everyone who joined us, thank you so much for being such an engaged and curious audience. And your questions, I'm sure they made this conversation even richer. I am sure you would all look forward to the diagnostic that is sent by the professor. Do keep checking your emails and stay in touch for the same. We hope you leave today not just with ideas, but with perspectives and perhaps a new way of thinking about how to stay ahead. With that, we will conclude today's masterclass. Thank you so much, and we look forward to welcoming you in the next. Bye bye.